Every year, on the last night of April, something strange happens in the mountains of central Germany. The sun goes down behind the Harz Range, and as darkness settles over the peaks, thousands of people begin climbing toward one particular summit, the Brocken, a mountain that spends most of the year hidden in fog. Most days you cannot even see it, but tonight the summit glows. Bonfires crackle against the dark, figures in pointed hats and ragged black cloaks circle the flames. They are laughing, dancing, sending sparks spiraling into the cold spring air. If you didn't know better, you might think you had wandered into a fairy tale or a nightmare. But this is real. This is Walpurgis Night, and it has been happening in one form or another for longer than anyone can remember. Now, if you visit today, it looks like a costume party. Tourists buy witch-shaped gingerbread in the village below. Children wave plastic broomsticks. A brass band plays somewhere near the food stalls. It feels safe, cheerful, a little kitschy, the kind of thing you photograph and forget by morning. But here is the thing. Beneath the fun, the roots go deep, very deep, deeper than Christianity, deeper than written history, deeper maybe than language itself. For centuries, this was not a party. This was a warning. Across Germany, Scandinavia, and Central Europe, people believed that on this exact night, the wall between the human world and something else grew dangerously thin. Witches took flight, demons gathered on mountaintops, the dead walked closer to the living than they should. And this mountain, the Brocken, permanently wrapped in mist, was the place where all of it came together, the summit where the devil himself held court.
So here is the question. How did one night collect so many meanings? How did a pagan bonfire become a saint's feast, then a witch's Sabbath, then a scene in the greatest play ever written, and then somehow circle all the way back to bonfires again? To find out, we need to go far back. Before churches, before books, before borders, to a time when spring was not a season, it was survival. Long before anyone called it Walpurgis Night, the last evening of April already belonged to fire. Now imagine Europe 3,000 years ago. No cities, no cathedrals, no written laws. The continent is a patchwork of tribal territories, Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, separated by forests so vast most people will never cross them in a lifetime. Life follows two rhythms, the sun and the seasons. When the days shorten and the ground freezes, death is close. When warmth returns and the first green pushes through the mud, you have survived. And in the ancient world, survival is a gift. Gifts demand gratitude. The Celts had a name for this moment, Beltane. On the night before the 1st of May, every hearth fire in the village was put out, deliberately, completely. The houses went dark. Then, on the hilltop above, the Druids lit two enormous bonfires, and the whole community drove their cattle between the flames. The panel animals panicked. They bellowed and kicked, but the people pressed them forward. Because fire, in their understanding, was not destruction. Fire was cleaning. It burned away the invisible sickness of winter, the curses clinging to wool and hide and skin. After the cattle passed, the people followed, running between the fires, leaping over the embers, feeling the heat scorch their legs and faces. Only then did they carry fresh flame back down to their homes and relight the hearths. The year had been rebooted. This was not entertainment. This was technology, the most powerful technology they had.
Across the Germanic lands, similar things were happening. Different names, different gods, same logic. Spring was a door, and doors open both ways. The same crack that lets warmth and life back in can also let other things through. Spirits, curses, the restless dead. The goddess Freya was honored with offerings and night-long gatherings in the woods. People sang, people drank, people made love in the fields, because to them, human fertility and the fertility of the soil were the same force. The earth needed to see life being made in order to remember how. And everywhere, on every hilltop across the continent, fire. Even the Romans had their version, Floralia, 5 days honoring Flora, goddess of flowers. Rome loosened its belt, social rules relaxed, theater turned bawdy. Flowers poured through the streets. The message was the same one being spoken on Celtic hilltops and in Germanic forests 1,000 miles to the north. Spring is a rupture, a break in the normal order, and during that break, things that are usually forbidden become temporarily possible. What united all of these celebrations was one primal conviction. The turning of winter into summer was not gentle. It was violent, magical, dangerous. The night before May Day was the hinge, the exact moment when the old world ended and the new one began. And at that hinge, reality itself became unreliable. Fire was the only answer. Fire to purify, fire to protect, fire to push back whatever might crawl through the gap between seasons. For thousands of years, this was enough. The fires burned, the cattle passed through, the fields came alive, people moved on. Then, in the 8th century, a young woman left England and walked into the Germanic wilderness. She carried something far more powerful than a torch. She carried a new god. Her name was Walpurga, and almost nothing about her story goes the way you would expect. She was born around the year 710 in Devon on the southern coast of England, not into poverty, into a family so devout that it would eventually produce 3 separate saints. Her father, Richard, was a pilgrim prince. Her brothers would both become missionaries. From childhood, Walpurga was surrounded by people who believed that the old gods of Europe were not merely wrong, but dangerous, and that saving the Germanic tribes from their pagan darkness was worth any sacrifice. She became a nun at Wimborne, a monastery in Dorset, and there she learned something unusual for a woman of her time: medicine. She studied herbs. She learned which plants reduced fever, which poultices drew infection from a wound. In a world where sickness was widely understood as punishment from God or possession by demons, a woman who could actually heal the body carried a quiet and radical kind of power. Around 748, her uncle Boniface, the most famous missionary in all of Europe, called her to Germany. The journey was terrifying. She crossed the Channel and traveled deep into Frankish territory, into lands where Christianity was a thin, fragile layer painted over centuries of older belief. Entire villages still prayed to forest spirits. Farmers still left offerings at sacred trees. The bonfires still burned every spring.
Walpurga did not arrive with a sword. She did not smash idols or burn sacred groves the way some missionaries did. She built. When her brother died, she took over his monastery at Heidenheim in Bavaria. She became abbess. She ran a school. She treated the sick. She earned trust, not through force, but through competence. And slowly, village by village, the people began to convert. She died on February 25th, 779, and then the strangeness began. The rock beneath her tomb in Eichstätt started to weep, not water, oil. A clear, faintly fragrant liquid seeped from the stone where her bones rested. Pilgrims who touched it claimed their sicknesses disappeared. The church investigated. The oil kept flowing. People came, first dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Benedictine nuns collected the oil in tiny glass vials and handed them to the faithful. They still do this today. Over 1,200 years later, the rock still weeps. Now, to be clear, the oil is real. You can visit Eichstätt today and see it for yourself. Between October and February each year, a thin film of moisture collects on the stone slab beneath the reliquary. The nuns catch it in a silver basin. Scientists who have examined it say it is most likely condensation. Cold stone in a humid crypt producing water the same way a glass of ice sweats on a summer day. The church has never officially declared it a miracle, but it has never discouraged the pilgrims either. And the line between a natural explanation and a sacred one has always been thinner than either side would like to admit.
On May 1st, 870, Walpurga was officially declared a saint. And the date was not an accident. May 1st was already one of the most important days on the European folk calendar. The old pagan threshold, the bonfire night, the hinge of the seasons. By placing Walpurga's feast on exactly this date, the church pulled off one of its most brilliant moves. Instead of fighting the old festival, it swallowed it. The bonfires could keep burning, but now they burned for a Christian saint. The night before May Day was no longer a pagan mystery. It was Saint Walpurga's Eve. But here is the twist. The church taught that Walpurga was a protector against witchcraft, that praying to her could shield you from evil magic, which meant the church was also saying, in the same breath, that the evil magic was real. If the saint protects you from witches, then witches must exist. And if witches exist, then the night dedicated to fighting them must be the night when they are strongest. A gentle English nun who healed the sick and taught the poor became, through one of history's strangest ironies, the namesake of the most feared night on the European calendar. The night when witches fly.
Now, picture the Brocken on a normal day. Fog. Endless, swirling, wet fog. The peak is not especially tall, just over 1,100 meters, but it behaves as though it were cursed. Clouds smother the summit roughly 300 days a year. The trees near the top grow stunted and twisted, bent permanently sideways by wind that never stops. On the rare clear day, hikers can see all of central Germany spread out below, but clear days almost never come. And sometimes, in just the right conditions of light and mist, the mountain does something that must have terrified anyone who saw it before the age of science. You stand near the summit. The sun is low behind you, and your shadow is thrown forward onto the fog. But it does not look like you. It is enormous. It towers. It stretches. It moves when you move, but slowly, like something thinking. And around its head, a perfect circle of rainbow light pulses like a halo. Scientists call this a Brocken specter, diffraction and reflection, nothing more. But imagine seeing it in the 14th century on a mountain that every village for 100 miles already whispers about. You would not think about optics. You would think you had just seen the devil. And it gets worse. The specter does not just stand there. If you raise your arm, it raises its arm, but with a delay, a sluggishness, as if it is deciding whether to copy you. If another hiker stands beside you, you can see your own specter, but not theirs. Each person sees only their own giant shadow, surrounded by its own private rainbow. So two people standing side by side on the same summit, looking at the same fog, see two completely different apparitions. In a world that believed demons could take your shape and wear your face, this would not be a curiosity, it would be proof. It was this mountain, remote and fog-drowned and optically haunted, that German folklore chose as the meeting place for the witches' Sabbath. And by the 15th century, the idea had hardened into something close to official doctrine. The concept of the Sabbath built itself slowly. For centuries, the church had treated folk magic as a minor sin, a superstition to be corrected through prayer and education. But in the 1400s, theologians in the Western Alps began constructing a much more dangerous idea. Witches were not isolated sinners, they were organized cult. They met in secret, they swore loyalty to Satan. They flew through the night sky on broomsticks and on the backs of demons. They converged on remote mountaintops and performed unspeakable rites. The details, as the inquisitors imagined them, read like a catalog of every fear a medieval mind could produce. Witches danced naked around bonfires. They brewed potions in cauldrons, potions that could ruin crops, potions that could kill cattle, potions that could curse a man's blood. They feasted on the flesh of stolen children, and when dawn came, they flew home, invisible, and went back to being midwives and healers and old women living alone at the edge of the village.
This was no longer just a story. It became a legal framework. Between the 15th and the 17th centuries, somewhere between 40 and 60,000 people were executed across Europe on charges of witchcraft, most of them women. Confessions were extracted through torture so systematic it had its own instruction manuals. And Walpurgis Night, the old fire festival, became evidence. If witches gathered on the Brocken every April 30th, then anyone acting strangely near that date was suspect. The night that had once meant survival now meant death. But ordinary people, the ones who were not theologians or judges, fought back the only way they knew. In Bavaria, they hung branches of hawthorn and rowan above their doors. In the Rhineland, church bells rang all night long to shatter any spell. Across Saxony and Thuringia, people climbed the nearest hill and lit bonfires. The same bonfires their ancestors had lit for thousands of years, now aimed at the very witches the church had taught them to fear. In the Czech lands, the response was even more direct. Communities built enormous pyres, sometimes 8 meters tall, and placed a straw figure dressed as a witch at the top. At nightfall, they lit the whole thing on fire. When thick black smoke erupted upward, the crowd cheered. "The witch is flying away!" It was terror dressed as celebration. Fear turned into festival through the oldest human act there is, making something burn. And then, one freezing December day in 1777, a man who would change everything about this story decided to climb the Brocken himself.
Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was 30 years old, already the most famous young writer in Germany, and profoundly restless. He had just moved to Weimar at the invitation of Duke Karl August. He was supposed to be an administrator, advising the Duke on mining policy and road construction and military budgets. Sensible work for a sensible man. But on December 10th, 1777, he set out on horseback for the Harz Mountains with a single guide and a need to see the Brocken with his own eyes. The locals thought he was out of his mind. It was deep winter. The trails were buried under snow. The Brocken in December was not a destination. It was a death trap. So why did he go? The answer, as far as anyone can tell, was personal. Goethe was in crisis. He had fallen into an intense, complicated attachment to Charlotte von Stein, a married woman at the Weimar court, and his creative life had stalled. He later wrote that he needed to test himself against something raw and indifferent, something that did not care about poetry or reputation. The Brocken in winter was exactly that, a mountain that could kill him without noticing. He climbed it the way some people jump into frozen lakes, not to die, but to remember what it felt like to be fully, physically alive.
But Goethe pushed upward, through frozen pine forests, through howling wind, and on the morning of December 11th, he reached the summit. The fog had briefly parted. He stood above a sea of white cloud, the sun blazing around him, and later wrote that he felt as if he were standing at the edge of the world. He never forgot that morning, and decades later, when he needed a setting for the most ambitious scene in the most ambitious work of German literature, he knew exactly where it would be. The Walpurgis Night scene in Faust, published in 1808. Mephistopheles leads Faust up the Brocken through a landscape that grows stranger with every step. Will-o'-the-wisps drift across the path. Owls stare from hollow trees. Witches stream upward through the darkness, on foot, on broomstick, on the backs of goats, singing, cackling, chanting. The mountain is chaos. A half-naked witch offers Faust a drink. Voices in the fog argue about politics and philosophy and desire. Everything forbidden is suddenly visible. Everything hidden is suddenly loud.
Goethe was not writing a horror story. He was writing about the human soul with its mask pulled off. The Brocken was desire without restraint, appetite without consequence. The witches were not really witches. They were projections. What happens when civilization's rules disappear and people confront what they actually want? But most people who read it did not care about the allegory. What they remembered was the image, the Brocken, the fire, the witches, the madness of a single night. Goethe made the legend permanent. Before Faust, Walpurgis Night was a fading regional superstition. After Faust, it was an icon, a fixed point in the Western imagination, referenced in every language, adapted in every art form. The echoes multiplied. Felix Mendelssohn composed the first Walpurgis Night in 1831, a cantata based on Goethe's poem. And the story it tells is sly. A group of pagan druids face persecution by Christians who have outlawed their spring rituals. So the druids disguise themselves as demons and ghosts. They light their forbidden fires. They howl in the darkness, and the Christians, terrified, run away.
The pagans win, not through force, through theater. The witches on the mountain are not evil. They are the old religion, refusing to die quietly. Bram Stoker reached for the same night when he wrote Dracula's Guest. An Englishman visiting Munich is warned by his hotel keeper, "Do not go out tonight, it is Walpurgis Night." He ignores the warning. He wanders into the countryside.
He finds an abandoned cemetery, and he encounters something in the snow that he cannot explain. Stoker understood what every storyteller before him understood. This night is a stage. Set your story here, and the audience is already afraid before you say a single word. By the 20th century, Walpurgis Night had escaped Germany entirely. It showed up in horror films, in anime, in metal lyrics, in video games. The mountain, the fire, the witches, the thin wall between worlds. These images became universal shorthand for the night when the rules break down. Goethe took a local superstition and made it belong to everyone. But he could not have done it if the raw material had not already been extraordinary. Thousands of years of fire and fear and faith compressed into a single night on a fog-covered peak. Come back to the Brocken on a modern April 30th. The mountain looks nothing like Goethe's vision, and everything like it. A narrow-gauge steam train chugs up from the village of Wernigerode, packed with families and tourists. At the summit, a stage has been set up near the old radio tower. Performers in witch costumes act out a pantomime of the Sabbath, while a sound system blasts folk rock into the fog. Vendors sell bratwurst and something called hexenbeer, witch's beer, in souvenir mugs shaped like cauldrons. Children run between the legs of adults, shrieking with delight that has nothing to do with fear. The Brocken, once the most dreaded summit in German folklore, has become a theme park of its own legend. But drive 30 minutes south, away from the tourists, and the night feels different. In smaller villages across the Harz, communities still build their own fires, not on stages, on the same hilltops their great-grandparents used. The flames are real, the heat is real, and when the wind shifts and smoke rolls across the field and you are standing in the dark with sparks spiraling into a black sky, something old and wordless moves through you. You do not need to believe in witches to feel it. The fire does the work. Cross the border into the Czech Republic, and the tradition takes on a wilder edge. The night of April 30th here is called Palenie Karodzieniec, the burning of the witches. Communities spend days building enormous pyres, crowned with a straw witch in a pointed hat. At dusk, the fire is lit. The crowd watches the flames climb, and when the heat catches the figure and thick black smoke erupts upward, they cheer. The witch is gone. Then the drinking starts, and couples wander off to find cherry trees in bloom, because the 1st of May in Czech tradition is the day of lovers, and a kiss under blossoming branches means your love will last the year. In Sweden, the same night sounds like a completely different holiday. No witch costumes, no straw figures, no theater of fear. Instead, there is music. At universities across the country, students gather by the thousands as the sun sets. They put on white caps, they sing. The songs are old and melancholy and gorgeous. Hymns to spring and light and the end of the long Scandinavian winter. Then the bonfires are lit, and the flames reflect off still lakes, and for a few hours, the whole country seems to pause and breathe. 3 countries, 3 completely different moods: festive horror, pagan defiance, lyrical joy, and yet the same night, the same fire, the same ancient instinct, stand together in the dark and make light. This is what makes Walpurgis Night extraordinary. It is not one story. It is every story, layered on top of every other story, century after century. None of them fully erasing the ones that came before. The pagan bonfire is still there, underneath the saint's feast, underneath the witch trial, underneath Goethe's poetry, underneath the tourist's Instagram post.
Each generation added its own meaning without removing what was already there. The night accumulated, it thickened, it became one of the densest cultural artifacts in Europe. A single date carrying the weight of pre-Christian ritual, Christian theology, medieval terror, romantic literature, and modern celebration all at once. And maybe that is the real mystery of this night. Not whether witches ever flew to the Brocken, not whether Saint Walpurga's tomb still weeps oil, not whether Goethe saw something in the fog. The mystery is simpler and stranger. Why, after all this time, do people still climb hills when April ends and set things on fire and stand together in the dark?
Maybe the answer is this. We have always known, long before religion, long before language, long before literature, that the turning of one season into another is not nothing. It is a door. And when you stand at a door, you light a fire, not because you are afraid of what is on the other side, but because fire is the oldest way humans have ever found to say, "We are here, we made it through, and whatever comes next, we will face it together." Tomorrow the Brocken will be wrapped in fog again. The bonfires will be ash. The costumes will go back into closets. The witch-shaped gingerbread will go stale in souvenir bags. But next April, when the night of the 30th comes around, someone will climb the hill again. Someone will stack the wood. Someone will strike the match. The fire always comes back. It has been coming back for longer than memory. And if history is any guide, it is not planning to stop.